Hi, thank you for watching my channel today. My name's Sarah and my channel is called Your True Shelf. Today I'm filming my wrap up for the month of July, in which I read 6 books in total, so quite a good month for me. 4 of these were library books, which is kind of unusual to have such a high proportion of library books. So the first book that I finished this month was a book that I feel like I've talked about quite a lot already on this channel, just because I loved it so much, and that was Waterfalls of Stars by Roseanne Alexander. So this is a book that I heard about through Charlotte of Tired Mama Tries to Read, and I ordered it from the library as soon as I heard her talk about it because it sounded exactly like my cup of tea. This is a book about, it's a non-fiction book, it's a memoir about Roseanne and her husband Mike. And basically Mike and her get together at university, and he applies for a job as a warden of Skomer Island, which is an uninhabited island which is off the coast of Wales near Pembrokeshire, and he applies for the post and ends up getting the job, which all happens at the very beginning of the book, so it's not a spoiler. And Roseanne obviously is going to go with him, and she's quite unprepared for this initially. And one of the big things as well, not only do they only have a few weeks to organise their life into, waterproof boxes to take away to the island and everything they might need in terms of supplies, but they also have to get married before they go, because there has to be a married couple's post. So there's quite a lot to sort out before they even get to Skomer. And then they end up spending 10 years there together, which again isn't a spoiler because that's the subtitle of the book. So this was an absolutely wonderful book. It affected me a lot when I read it. It's got amazing nature writing, and it talks a lot about what it's like to be on this island with no other people, in the midst of all kinds of weather, snow, in the midst of storms, in the midst of oil spillages, about the wonderful wildlife which comes and goes to the island every year, and some individual animals that they form a bond with particularly. And it talks a bit about their relationship, not massively about the relationship between them, because it's very much their journal of their time there rather than how their relationship's been in Skomer. But the only thing that I would have given it even better mark, so I've given it 5 stars definitely, but the only thing that would have given it 6 stars is if I had a little bit more about actually day to day, what a normal day looked like, because I know that they get up really early and they've got certain jobs that they have to do on the island, but how they fitted everything in, because they had to do all the cooking from scratch, and they had to do repairs and maintenance and lots of wildlife records they had to keep and everything. So I would have liked to see like a typical day in the life. But other than that, it was just a superb book, and I really always have this deep calling to go and live in the middle of nature, or be in nature as much as I can. And so books like this kind of feed that in me, which is really good, and it's really made me think about it for a long time afterwards as well. So that's the first one. So I've already spent 3 minutes just talking about one book, so I had better speed up. The second one that I read was also a library book, and I read this through the Libby app, which is our free library app, and that was Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. I read this because I've heard Jean from Jean's Bookish Thoughts talk about it a lot last year, and this is the first in a sci-fi series. So Binti is from a planet where she is the only one of her people who is going to university on a different planet, and it's basically about her kind of journey from her planet to the university, and about some things that happen en route there. And I just didn't really like it. This isn't my genre that I would normally read, but it just wasn't for me. Like, it was very short, so it was only about like 90 or 100 pages. I didn't kind of get the different types of creatures that she was interacting with, and I didn't really get like the scenery, and it just all seemed to move very quickly, and everything seemed to resolve quite neatly and smoothly, and I don't know, I just didn't gel with it at all. So I give that one a 2 star. I'm not going to really spend any more time talking about it. I'm not going to carry on with the rest of the series. The next one that I read was this, which is Playing Away by Adele Parks. This is my first Adele Parks that I've ever read, and I just fancied something kind of like a palette cleanser, like light and easy to read. I got this in a charity shop a while back. This follows a woman called Connie, who is just married for a year to her husband Luke, and she's happily married, and they're the only couple who are married of their friends, and they're quite kind of like they're in London, they're having quite sort of busy social lives, lots of sort of partying and drinking and dinner parties and all that kind of stuff. And then she goes away for a work conference, and she meets a guy called John, who she is absolutely irresistibly attracted to, and she ends up, as obvious from the cover, she ends up having an affair with him. And it's about basically how life changes once she's started this affair. And so I had lots of bugbears with this, but there were some good points. So bugbears are, firstly, there's a lot of characterising women by their appearance in this book. So at the beginning, when she's introducing us to all her friends, they're all characterised by how attractive they are and what dress size they are, which didn't like that. Then, sorry, I can hear my little boy calling. I'm just going to pause. Then the other thing is it was written, like, to be fair, it was written in 2002, I think. No, 2000 it was written. And so, obviously, it's nearly 20 years old now, which I can't believe 2000 was that long ago. And there was other things like saying how feminism wasn't cool anymore. That was ages ago. Sorry about the children noises. There was also just some inconsistencies in the book. Like, one example was that she had come around, so she was in like this really miserable place. One of her friends had come around and made her have a shower and wash her hair, and then literally a couple of days later she then was in a similar situation, and she said, like, oh, I haven't washed my hair for 10 days. And I was like, well, you have, because your friend came around 2 days ago and put you in the bath. So there was just some like really annoying little inconsistencies in the plot like that. And then the other thing which I found quite offensive was like how one of the girls was like talking about having a gay best friend because that would add to her kudos if she had a gay best friend and stuff like that. So there was things in there which I found like quite horrible. But it was a page turner. There's a lot of sexual tension in the book, which keeps you like wanting to keep going and reading and find out what happens. The actual affair is quite well written, and I enjoyed reading about that. But like I said, I did have some issues with it. However, I did see afterwards there is actually a second one in a series which is set a number of years later, and so even though I've only given this 3 stars, and even though I have issues with it, I'm now kind of curious as to what happens, so it does actually hook you in, like I said. So that's that one, mixed reviews. The next one that I read was another library book called Me, My Bike and a Street Dog Called Lucy by Ishbel Holmes. This was another non-fiction book, and my mum recommended this to me after she'd heard about it on the radio, and I saw it in the library and borrowed it. This is basically the memoir of Ishbel Holmes, who is a Scottish girl with Iranian heritage who wanted to cycle around the world. And when she's cycling in, I need to scoot forward again. When she's cycling in Turkey, this sweet little dog, literally just runs after her and won't leave her. And this is the dog that she names Lucy, and she ends up transporting Lucy around with her in her bike, in this little crate that she attaches to the front of her bike. And it's about their story. And Ishbel has had an extremely traumatic, abusive childhood. And so she intersperses her memoir of her childhood and all the horrible abuse that she was subjected to. And it sort of ties us in with Lucy, who's a dog who's been abused too, and how they kind of help each other. And I warn you, there are very sad parts in this book. it's not a happy book overall. Well, there's happy bits in places, but it's also not that happy, and she's also subjected to quite a lot of horrible things while she's travelling through Turkey, about people who are constantly trying to who were constantly asking her for sex and like trying to touch her and stuff like that, which is quite horrible to read. So I did enjoy the book, and I think Ishbel is amazing. Like the amount of trauma that she's overcome is incredible, and I have followed her on social media now, and I know she's still going through quite a lot of trauma, and she's now working, bless her heart, like to help rescue street animals, dogs and cats around the world, and she's doing amazing work. So I think that she's an incredible woman. The book is important but sad, I will say that. And then, how many is that? So one other library book that I read this month, which is this one, which is Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell. I'm just realising as I go through these, I've read quite a lot of sad books this month. So another sad one here. This is a YA book about Eleanor and Park, and it's set in the 1980s. I think it's in 1986. Park is your kind of average school kid. He's about 16, and he comes from like a happy family and things. And Eleanor moves to the school at the same age after she has been come back home after she was kicked out by her stepdad for a year, and she now lives with her mum, her 4 younger siblings, and her abusive stepfather. And she is very shy and traumatised, and her and Park start making friends on the bus, and they have this very slow, cautious relationship which develops over the course of the book. And you want to keep reading. It's not happy reading, and there are so many points in the book where I was just screaming in my head, tell an adult what's happening to you, because the abuse is so horrible, and you just want a person of responsibility to know what's going on, and Eleanor is just scared to tell anybody about what's happening to her and what's happening to her family. And that's really hard to read as a person who does safeguarding and things as part of their job. It's really hard to read other people there's massive safeguarding issues and they're not being addressed and they're not being noticed, and that's really hard. So this has got lovely parts in, and I think how they've done the teenage relationship is very sort of realistic and really lovely, but it's not an easy read either. So that was that one. And then the last one I have to talk about is an audiobook which took me months to finish, but I have actually finished it now, and that is My Name is Leon by Kit Duvall. So this is the story, again set in the 1980s, and again featuring abuse. I didn't realise I'd read so much abuse this month. This is about a boy called Leon who is about 9, and his little baby brother Jake. And Leon is mixed race and Jake is white, and their mum has serious mental health problems and can't look after them. And they both get taken into care with a lovely lady called Maureen. And basically social services make the decision that they're going to be split up and adopted separately, because they feel that Jake has a more of a chance being adopted if he's on his own rather than if he's with Leon. So that is obviously extremely sad and extremely horrifying, and yeah, just raises all sorts of issues. And so it's basically follows Leon's story, and it's all from Leon's point of view, and it's narrated by Lenny Henry. He does an amazing job at the narration. He's brilliant, and I think hearing it from Leon's point of view is really interesting, because never do we feel like I never felt like his point of view was unrealistic. I felt like he was giving us a good description of how it felt to be him, age kind of 9, and the scrapes he gets himself into, and how when he does things which from an adult's perspective aren't acceptable, like when he steals things for instance, it makes us totally get why he's doing it, because we're hearing it from his perspective. And we don't ever feel like judgy towards him or angry towards him, because you just get why he's doing what he's doing. and you get why he's behaving, how he's behaving, and everything. And I really enjoyed his story. I enjoyed hearing about the other people in his community. There's lots of issues about race and race riots in the 1980s in Birmingham where it's set, and it's a really good book. I don't know why it took me so long to read. I guess it's kind of different from what I'd have read because it's set from the child's perspective, but this did bring a new depth to the story, which I don't think we would have got from an adult's perspective. But I think I gave it, I think probably in retrospect I give it 4 stars. So it was good, and I'd be interested to read other stuff by Kit Duvall now that I've read that one. So that's all the 6 books that I've read in the month of July. So 3 books which were sad, 1 book which had irritations and good bits, 1 book sci-fi which wasn't for me, and Waterfalls of Stars, which was amazing. So mixed bag last month. Anyway, let me know what you've been reading in the last month. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I talked about today, or that you'd be interested in reading any of them. And I hope you've had a really good reading month in July, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.